Hey Matt, you know what?
What?
I think this just might be our masterpiece.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be ranking all 9 of Tarantino's films. We're counting Kill Bill parts 1 and 2 as just one collective. As Tarantino himself has stated, it's all one film.
As always with these rank videos, we're not ranking these in terms of like what's the best made film. We're just doing it in terms of the one that we personally enjoy the most. So don't hate us too much. All right, let's get into it. So coming in at number 9, no surprise to anyone, I don't think, it is going to be Death Proof.
I mean, it's a surprise to me, since I fucking hate the next one that's coming up.
We'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, I would like to have picked something a bit more like interesting for last place. I don't. But it's just Death Proof is
I would never call my choice interesting.
So yeah, the way that we do this is we both rank them and then we add up the numbers and that's how we get it. So we average it out and Death Proof just came last.
Yeah, to be fair, this is a worthy loser, I suppose. It's a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it? It's just a bit of a jumble mess. Like, the dialogue wasn't exactly there. Anytime Kurt Russell was on screen, I found genuinely interesting.
Yep.
And of course, I'd say the saving grace of the film is probably the very last act. That car chase is one of the best car chases I've seen on film.
Just ever, yeah. I mean, yeah, I still don't think this is a bad film. Like, if someone else had made this film, I don't think it would be looked down on as it is. It's just when you compare it to the rest of Tarantino's filmography, it's not quite got the flair or the impact that some of his others have. There is a lot of dialogue in this, and like you say, it's not his best dialogue, it's not his most compelling. There's really, kind of in the same sense of, you know, what we were saying about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's not a lot of plot, and they just stretch out like a small amount of plot for a whole thing. And it's just not that engaging. They do some cool stuff by using like old film techniques, like they do like the sprocket bobbing thing. I think there's a scene, you know, they have like black and white sections, which are like, and the film grain. So it looks cool. It's a nice like throwback to like, you know, B movies and stuff.
The B movie?
It's a nice throwback to the B movie. Great double feature there, Death Proof followed by the B movie. But yeah, just in general, it's just, you know, that's not enough really. Like you say, the last act, the car chase, is really, it's one of the best scenes Tarantino's probably ever directed, but it's not enough to save the film, unfortunately.
No. Tarantino's known for creating really complex and in-depth characters, and I'd say in this film there's not really that many that stand on to the scale with the other characters he's released in the films.
The issue is, with a film like Death Proof, is you can attribute any flaw that it has with, well, he's creating a B movie from, you know, like, what, the 70s kind of thing. And those movies wouldn't have had complex... So I've heard, like, for every flaw that people have with this film, I've seen other people counter, well, that's the point, is that's what he's recreating. But at the end of the day, you've got to make a compelling film, and I did find myself bored throughout quite a lot of Death Proof, so...
At number 8, we have The Hateful Eight. This is the film I'd put at number 9, technically, you know, but
I really don't know why you hate this so much.
I don't like it. It's kind of the same thing you said about Death Proof, is that the context is simple, like the plot is very thin, and they already stretch a very thin plot line over an almost 3-hour film.
Yeah.
It's just a bit of a slog to get there. I mean, the whole premise of it is you have this gang of detestable people that hate one another, as well as just people in general, I suppose. Yeah. And they get trapped in this cabin in a snowstorm, and one by one they just start betraying each other, which, you know, it sounds interesting when you've got a group of characters like that in one setting.
It's getting to the haberdashery for me. Like, in general, I quite like The Hateful Eight, but the first, I think it's like the first 40 minutes or something is just in the stagecoach, and it's just dialogue, and some of it's interesting, but it's just too much. For me, once it gets to the haberdashery, it picks up, and there's intrigue and there's suspense, and at a point there's action, and I think all that stuff's good, but it's just the getting there.
Yeah. Some of the performances are still really good. Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell.
Hot take, or cold take, because it's set in like Wyoming. I personally think Samuel L. Jackson should have been nominated for an Oscar for that role. I think that's one of his best performances he's ever given. Sadly,
at least in my opinion, he didn't save this one. For me, it was too long, which I think is what...
It was too long, yeah.
We're getting that quite a lot in especially Tarantino's recent films.
I mean, I will say the movie looks gorgeous. The score by Ennio Morricone, which is originally taken from The Thing, he never made it onto that soundtrack, but it's got a great score, great cinematography. It looks really gorgeous to look at and stuff, but yeah, it just meanders a bit. At number 7, we've got Jackie Brown. Now, we watched this about 2 days ago. We'd both seen it before, but we both needed to rewatch it, and it went up in our estimations the second time we watched it?
The reason being, at first it was probably going to come either in last or second to last for me. And while it hasn't made much of a jump, I think the main reason was I watched it about 5 years ago, give or take.
Sure.
And I don't think, like, at that point I was a big fan of that style of film. I was more into just, like, the compact 2-hour, like, action throwaway piece.
Like faster paced, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and so when we watched it a couple of days ago, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I mean, it's still not a film I'd put on often, if at all. Like, especially in this list where Tarantino set the bar so high.
Yeah.
I know people that love this film.
Yeah, this is like a weird one because like 9 out of 10 rankings it's towards the bottom, but 1 in every 10 it's like right at the top because the people who love this film really love this film.
Yeah.
The way that I look at Jackie Brown is if I'm going to watch a Tarantino film, I'm not going to watch Jackie Brown. But if I want to watch a blaxploitation movie or a crime movie or a hangout movie, then I might watch Jackie Brown. Mm-hmm. You can tell, I mean, he adapted this from Elmore Leonard's book Rum Punch, and you can tell that it's not his original thing because it's just not, it's got his tropes in there, there's a lot of bare feet and it's dialogue heavy and it's, you know, the soundtrack's really great and it's told in a non-linear narrative, but in general it just doesn't feel that Tarantino-y. Mm-hmm. But in some ways that's to the film's strength because I think it's probably Tarantino's most kind of like mature film. It's his less, you know, it's his least sort of like cartoonish or like, ooh, that's shocking and violent, you know. It's like, it's kind of more realistic. And
well, I feel like that's why it would come high on so many people's lists, is because it stands out amongst the crowd.
Yeah, for people who don't like Tarantino, it's probably at the top.
Yeah. I mean, this is the one Tarantino film that I think focuses on like a love story as well. And it was done to like a different audience as well, because whenever you see a romance in films, especially nowadays, it's always like young people to like either teenagers to young adults. Well, this focused on a more middle-aged.
Yeah, I think Jackie Brown, I think she's 45 in the film. And, you know, there are themes in there of like, well, kind of like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well, with like getting older and being past your prime and how you deal with that and how you view yourself. And so it has some interesting and deeper themes than a lot of Tarantino movies do. So yeah, I think in general, it's a good film. It's just not got the kind of excitement behind it.
Yeah, it's not as memorable to us.
Yeah, but still a decent entry.
At number 6, we have Tarantino's original film, Reservoir Dogs. And I feel like that's why it comes at number 6, to be honest. It feels like, while this is good, it's almost like the director is warming up to bigger and better things.
Oh, okay.
The film is only about, what, an hour and a half, just over?
Yeah, it's a pretty short one.
Yeah, it's pretty short, and so I feel like that's a good starting block for Tarantino, and if people are watching this who aren't aware of many of Tarantino's films, it's probably a good starting point for them as well.
Yep.
So I feel like this is a good film for the length that it is. A lot of the characters have their time to shine, but I think it's going back to the point that like this isn't Tarantino's best work, and it shows because how relatively new to the process he was in like writing, directing, and all that stuff.
Right. Okay.
I feel like this is almost a prelude of things to come for him. It was still an enjoyable film all around.
So for me, I actually think this is up there with Tarantino's best. It's not his best, but I think it's like top half probably. But it just in terms of like how much I enjoy it. Like I think I've seen it 3 times, and I don't really get the urge to watch it often. Like it's got its standout scenes, like the scene with Michael Madsen and Stuck in the Middle of You and stuff like that.
The ending with the Mexican standoff.
The Mexican standoff. I remember the first time I watched it as well. Genuinely, I had no idea who was the policeman, and I was like, I was trying to figure it out, and then the twist came, or the reveal came, and it genuinely got me. I didn't call it and stuff, and you know, again, it's got a great soundtrack, like Little Green Bag, and it really set up everything that we've come to expect from Tarantino. You know, it opens with like an 11-minute, or it's an 11-page because I read the screenplay. It's an 11-page just dialogue scene, which that just goes against all the rules of screenwriting.
Yeah.
He came straight out of the gate and went, "Fuck it, this is my thing." And it's told out of order, which is, you know, is done in such a way where you get the information when you need it and stuff like that, and it makes it more interesting. And the whole point of like having a heist movie where you don't see the heist is a cool take as well. But it's just, I don't know what it is.
It's just the aftermath, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just you just see the aftermath. But there's just something about the film that I don't know. I just can't really latch onto the characters. I don't really get the urge to watch it that often. Mm-hmm. But it's still a very good film.
I think this was just a case of Tarantino putting his foot in the door and making his mark as much as he could.
Yeah, definitely. At number 5, it's Tarantino's latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, this is still relatively new in our minds, well, in everyone's minds, I guess. So this is the most likely to change position.
I feel like it's in a good place for now, though.
Yeah, we both had mixed feelings on it. There was some stuff that we really liked. There's some stuff that we weren't so keen on.
Yeah.
We'll link the review in the description for you if you want to watch that, if you haven't already. But yeah, there's some really great stuff. I mean, the last like 20-25 minutes is some of the best like work that Tarantino has put out there. It's a weird one, you know. Like the first time we watched it, we both kind of found it self-indulgent and a slog. And then I went back and watched it a second time, and I really was able to savour it a lot more the second time. So for me, it went up a couple of places. But yeah, it's got, great performances. It's funny. Like we say, the last act is just ridiculous.
Some of Tarantino's more likable characters, like Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, for me, are some of my favourite Tarantino.
They're likable even though they shouldn't be. I guess you can say that about most of Tarantino's characters, though. They're anti-heroes in a way.
It's more like you're rooting for them, even though you know that they both have their own personal demons, kind of thing.
But yeah, I mean, I personally I have a soft spot for films about Hollywood. A lot of my favourite films are about Hollywood. So seeing films be made, or TV series be made inside another film, I always think that's really cool to see. So
there were nice callbacks as well. Like, I didn't realise it at first, but I came to realise that the set that Rick Dalton plays his cowboy character on is actually the same set as from Django Unchained.
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
Until we
watched that video, yeah.
So it's full of like little Easter eggs and callbacks. So if you are a Tarantino head or whatever the fuck they call his fans, yes, I think it's very enjoyable to go through and like try and spot each of these little callbacks that he does. It is almost like he's trying to do his own best of Tarantino kind of thing.
In some ways, it's like the most Tarantino film he's done yet.
Yep.
Like it's got. I mean, we know Tarantino's always referenced cinema, but never this blatantly. And I think this is just Tarantino going, taking a step back, saying, I don't need a really intense plot or a really, I don't need a lot of story. I just want to hang out with these characters I've created. He gave them so much backstory, it's ridiculous. Like, there are videos out there where he like breaks it down with Leonardo DiCaprio, and even after they filmed the film, Leonardo DiCaprio just clearly has no idea about half the stuff Tarantino's on about. Yeah. So yeah, it's it's something that Tarantino had been thinking about for a few years. It's his love letter to Hollywood, and it's a pretty good time.
I still think Margot Robbie was a little wasted in this. She wasn't in it that much, and her whole plot line is just kind of come see the film that Sharon Tate starred in with Margot Robbie. Like, she didn't really have any impact in the film at all.
Yeah,
I know why she was there, because it is based on the Manson murders, and so whenever she's on screen, there is this little bit of tension, like, something could happen to her.
Yeah.
But then, Tarantino steps in, he works his Hollywood magic, and he decides to turn what was some of the most grisly murders at the time. Like, it really caught people by surprise and shocked them to the core, and he just made it his own thing.
Yep. That's Tarantino.
At number 4, we have Pulp Fiction, Tarantino's standout film that really captured the minds and imaginations of a lot of people. And it changed Hollywood probably forever. Like, this script in particular stands out amongst some of the best ever created.
Yep.
I read somewhere it was like number 16 on like the most influential or best scripts of all time or something like that.
I mean, obviously that's subjective, but in general, I think it's probably even higher than that.
It's not subjective, it's on the internet, Daniel.
But yeah, like in general, like I've been to film school, and every fucking person at film school just bangs on about Pulp Fiction. Like, every fucking film student goes on about Pulp Fiction, and for a reason. The thing is, a lot of the reasons Pulp Fiction is great, we can't even fucking appreciate. Like, it just changed the way, like, you see films now with great soundtracks. You think about Guardians of the Galaxy or Baby Driver and stuff like that. Pulp Fiction was like one of the first films to really do that. Again, now in movies, you get these hangout movies, you get movies where people just talk and it doesn't really progress the plot. Again, Pulp Fiction, one of the first films to really do that with dialogue. The whole out of order thing, there's loads of just really cool stylistic choices, like the fact that you never find out what's in the briefcase, or just like little things coming up on screen, like when she says, "Don't be a," and then they do that. Like, just loads of little stylistic choices like that. It's just a cultural phenomenon at this point, isn't it?
It's some of the best dialogue Tarantino's written as well, especially, I'd say, for Samuel L. Jackson. Like, the final scene in this film, where they're in the diner, he just has so many great lines, no matter, like, what character he's interacting with. You just think, That guy, I want him to go to my next birthday party and just spout shit.
I'm just going to throw out there, I would not want Jules Winfield at my birthday party. But yeah, like, there's so many cool characters. Like, you know, obviously Samuel L. Jackson is fucking awesome in it. But then you've got like Winston Wolfe, who's really cool in it.
He's still doing that thing now. I see him on adverts.
Yeah, that's how iconic that. I mean, I think Harvey Keitel was kind of already known for playing those roles, but like that in particular is probably one of the standout ones for sure. I would throw out some quotes there, but there's just too many. Like, you can't even go, oh, what about this quote? Because
Plus, you'd probably get them wrong and upset people.
Oh no, I know my Pulp Fiction quotes. Don't you worry. But yeah, but they'd be out. You know, you can't even start quoting it because you just won't start. But really quotable. Really good storytelling, really unique storytelling. Good performances as well. I think this is the film that really put Samuel L. Jackson on the map. Like, he had been in films before this, but I think this was the one where people went, oh, okay, that's a guy who can like lead a movie kind of thing. Obviously, it revitalised John Travolta's career. There's nothing you can say about Pulp Fiction that a million people haven't already said.
Even put Uma Thurman in a new light.
Yep.
Like, I think because of this performance, she got especially Tarantino's attention for like reusing her in more of his films.
Yeah, for sure. There's just, I don't know, there's so much great stuff in here. There's so many iconic scenes, you know. We watched Pulp Fiction as well like 2 days ago, and I've just been listening to the soundtrack ever since. It's such a good soundtrack. A lot of people would have this at number one. I don't know. I guess the reason this is slightly low for us is, I don't know about you, but for me personally, the stuff with Butch is my least favourite, and it kind of brings the film down, like it slows it to a halt a bit for me. So the ones ahead of this I just prefer because they're more action packed or faster paced or whatever, but this is still like up there with some of my favourite films. Yeah,
I'd say the reason it comes at number 4 for me is just because our top 3 just has that bit more of an enjoyable factor to it. Like, they're a bit more fun, I think the word is. Yeah, well, this is great in terms of dialogue and some of the characters. It is, like you said, it's almost like Tarantino's original hangout movie, where not a lot happens, so I can see some people finding it a bit slow at times.
Yeah.
But I think overall it's still a really good film and a game changer in terms of what came after it.
Number 3 is Inglourious Bastards.
This is what I meant by a fun film. I'd say this is the most fun Tarantino ever has a film become.
Do you think?
Yeah. It's just a bit of a mix of all sorts of different things as well. There's like some really serious action-packed bits, and then there's some that just reflects Brad Pitt's character.
Yeah, like when we studied media in high school, like one of the scenes that our teacher would always show us was the opening of Inglourious Bastards and like how they build tension with that. And Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa is just one of the best villains of all time. They even nearly didn't make this film because they couldn't find someone good enough to play him, and then like last minute they found Christoph Waltz.
Praise the Lord!
That's a bingo! Is that the way you say it? That's a bingo? Lieutenant Aldo Rain's speech where he's like gathering up the bastards. I watch that clip on YouTube all the time. I love that speech. I think it's so well written. The ending is just one of the most memorable. It's so audacious as well. Like the thing is, to make a movie where a bunch of Jewish soldiers go and blow up Hitler is one thing. But to have that movie be one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the 21st century, that just says it all. Like, that just says how well made. Like, I think, you know, in general, Pulp Fiction's considered to be his best film. I think this is his best directed film.
Yeah.
I think he's able to do stuff with tension here that he's not able to do in some of his other
really
films.
wish I'd been in that meeting where Tarantino went, right, this is my new film. And you can just imagine all these suits just reading there with their little spectacles on the ends of their noses, like, and
then they blow up Hitler.
What?
Yeah, and it's fucking nuts. But that's why we love Tarantino.
Yeah, this is just probably his most outlandish film in terms of like the plot.
Definitely.
But you can't help but love it. It's just so out there.
It is, yeah. There are times where it slows down. Like the basement's, as good as the basement scene is, and the way that it erupts at the end and the tension it builds, it does, like sometimes I watch that film and I can't be bothered watching that bit.
Yeah.
Because I think
that for me is what reaffirms it as a Tarantino film. Once you get to the basement bit, it's just like, here's the Tarantino tropes that you've grown to know from his previous film.
I could be wrong, but I think I'm right in saying that the basement scene is 40 minutes long, I think. Which is
long.
A long time for one scene. But the fact that I never hear people complain about that scene says, I mean, can you imagine if a film came out today and there was a 40-minute scene in it and no one complained? You'd be like, well, they did a good job there. So, yeah, really good scene, really great ending, great characters, great villain.
just a lot of fun all around, top to bottom.
Who doesn't want to see Nazis get fucking smoked?
The Nazi ones.
Other Nazis, yeah. Inglourious Bastards, what a film.
And number 2, we've got Kill Bill, which for me was a hell of a lot of fun. Almost as much as Inglourious Bastards, but in different ways.
Yeah, I know we've condensed this into one film, but you can't help but look at the two parts because...
Part 1 is definitely more action-centric. Especially the bit with all those ninja...
The Crazy 88.
The Crazy 88, yeah.
Yeah.
Just that whole scene at the end where she's just fighting all of them and you're just like, woo.
That whole chapter, The House of Blue Leaves, is just so good.
Yeah.
So part 1 is Tarantino's homage to samurai movies and part 2 is his homage to kung fu movies. And so in that, they are totally different. Like part 2, some people describe it as like a Western kind of thing. It's a lot more emotional, a lot more dramatic. And I think, again, like we were saying with how Jackie Brown is quite mature and emotional, the sort of last half hour or something of Kill Bill Volume 2 is also like that. I think that's up there with Tarantino's best work. David Carradine, Bill, his monologue on Superman is also not even one of my favourite Tarantino scenes, that's just one of my favourite monologues in movie history. And like you say, part 1, I've watched part 1 more than any other Tarantino movie because it's just so rewatchable. Like the anime sequence is so good, the fight scenes are so good. Again, like it's structured in such a way that there's never like really any downtime, you know, there's always something exciting happening on screen, there's always some big action scene, and it's so silly, like the fucking use of blood in this, like, you know, they cut someone's arm off and it fucking spurts all over the room and shit, and it's just so much fun.
What you can say is, even if someone doesn't like one part of Kill Bill, they'll probably really enjoy the second part. Because Volume 2 is like you said, it's more focused on the character side of things. Like it delves into the bride's past, how she came to be who she is today, and her relationship with Bill. And I feel like if you're going into Volume 2 expecting the action from Volume 1, you're going to be heavily disappointed.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, no, it does have a lot of that. I'd say the first half is pretty action heavy, to be fair. There's a few good scenes with action, but I know what you mean. It's not like as like
in terms of
breakneck speed.
In terms of the scale that was provided in Volume 1, you're not going to get that same.
No.
But I also feel like why I don't want to rate this at number 1 is because part of me thinks that the fight with Bill at the end is a bit anticlimactic. Yeah,
so again, like we were saying with Death Proof, this is one of those things where it kind of hinders the movie, but it's a reference, it's a homage. So you can't, like, I remember the first time I watched Kill Bill, I don't know, I was probably like 15 maybe younger, and I had no idea.
You were too young! It's an 18!
I was watching a lot of 18 stuff when I was 15, mate. Yeah, the first time that I watched Kill Bill Volume 2, I remember having that exact thought. At the end, I was like, really? That's like the final thing? But once you learn who Tarantino is and what he's doing, and once you watch a lot of Kung Fu movies, you go, okay, well, that's kind of how they end a lot of Kung Fu movies, is with this anticlimactic, like, magical, was it like a 5-fingered death punch or something?
I can't remember what they call it, but they call it like the heart explosion.
Yeah, but even you take 5 steps and then, but even though it's like, even though in terms of action, it's anticlimactic, emotionally, I find it really fulfilling.
Yeah. I'd say the reason I was a bit unimpressed by it when I first saw it is because Tarantino now has such a high standard in terms of the endings of his films. Like, even from the get-go.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Like, even the Mexican standoff, like, in his first film, is one of the better scenes of the entire film. And so
the diner scene in Pulp Fiction, and Glorious Bastards.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so I just expected a little more, but it's still fulfilling in ways of, even though you don't get the action you came to expect from Volume 1, it's still done in a really clever way to, as you mentioned before, it's a reference back to what was built up earlier in the film. So I feel like it was very well executed in general. I just didn't really expect it to be that sudden. Because it's been building up over 2 films as well, you expect this huge blowout, and you don't really get that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But that being said, you get more of an emotional impact when you get the close enough half-an-hour scene of just her and Bill talking as well.
And when she meets BB and...
Yeah, exactly.
And then afterwards as well, when after she's killed Bill and she's in the bathroom and she's crying and it kind of turns to laughter and, you know... Yeah. You
still get that sense of closure and satisfaction from it, which is all you can ask for from it.
Exactly. Yep. All right, and number 1 is Django Unchained. Now this, not only is this my favourite Tarantino movie, this is just one of my favourite movies in general.
Yeah, it's the film that got me into Tarantino films. Like, I'd watched a couple beforehand, but I didn't really know him as being like Tarantino. I was just like, oh, I remember some of the other films he's done. His name wasn't big for me yet.
Yeah.
But I remember coming out of this film and being so impressed that I had to go back and watch his other works. I think I watched Pulp Fiction after Django Unchained. I think I might have watched Reservoir Dogs after Django Unchained. Yeah. And that says a lot when a director can bring out a film that gets you to go back and rewatch all his other works.
It does, and it says a lot.
I know that some people do have problems with this film, and they might find a little fault to have it at number one. But I just...
Our list, bitch.
Yeah. I just think that effect it had on me is second to none. Like, none of his other films were able to do that.
No, me neither.
When you come across something that has such a big impact on how you see film, it speaks volumes, and it just has to come up here. Yeah,
no, I agree completely. I remember my dad, my dad doesn't really watch a lot of movies. He's like a really busy guy, and he doesn't get a chance to watch movies. But occasionally a film will come out and he'll go, right, I've watched this, like all my friends are recommending me it, it's fucking awesome, watch it. And obviously now I watch films and I recommend them to him, but when this came out, I remember I was at his house and he went, right, like all my fucking friends have been recommending me this film for ages. I finally bought it, watched Django Unchained, and I watched it. It finished at like 3 a.m, because I put it on at like midnight. And I remember just being like, that was like hands down one of the best films I've seen. Like, there's so much that's good with it. Like, again, Robert Richardson's cinematography is really gorgeous. The set design, the production, like even the costumes, like when Django has that blue fucking suit on, it's so badass. The performances, DiCaprio's amazing, Samuel L. Jackson's amazing.
Christoph
Waltz.
This was my first introduction to Jamie Foxx, I believe. I don't remember seeing him in many films.
It might have been mine as well, actually.
I just thought he was so cool.
Well, that's the thing, like, that's how good everyone else is in the film, that Jamie Foxx gives one of the best performances of his entire career, and he's not even the one that people talk about. It's just, again, great script. Like, I remember I put this on a couple of months ago. I think I was doing the washing up or something, and I put that on in the background, and I was just going to turn it off when I finished the washing up. And I just ended up watching it all by accident because it's just so compelling. I was like, I'll just wait till the end of this bit. I'll just wait, and I just ended up watching the whole thing. It's so good. It just moves at such a good pace.
Well, you say that. There is a bit just towards like the latter half that it does slow down a little bit. And I'm very thankful that was I believe in say like a 40-minute poker scene that was cut from the film.
Yeah, I don't even know if they filmed it. It was in the script, but I don't know if they filmed it. But yeah, there was going to be this whole...
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad they cut that because...
I want to see that.
Well, in like an extended like version, or if they brought out on Netflix in one of those like 4-part...
like a miniseries
kind of things, that could work, I guess. But it does slow down for a little bit once they get to the mansion. And they do have...
It slows down, but for me personally, that's like the best bit of... Well, except for maybe the shootout, that's like the best bit of... Because I guess it depends how invested you are, but for me, I was so involved with that. Like, yeah, it's slow, but it's just so intense that it's still interesting.
Well, I grew to love it. I know there are people that find that to be a fault, though, and a fault in a lot of Tarantino's works. But yeah, it does work out really well, and I think it's a testament to the actors involved that managed to capture your imagination for such a long period of time when they are just talking.
And the script writing.
Yep.
For me, the only problem I really have with Django Unchained is after the shootout, there's like an extra 15 minutes. And I've heard people say like, oh, well, it's important for the hero to go back into the lion's den of danger and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't change the fact that it just feels out of place for me. The last 15 minutes, it feels like it should end with a shootout. And I don't like Tarantino's cameo. I know it's only a small nitpick, but the guy is just not that good at acting, and he does an Australian... Even I can tell that it's a bad Australian accent, and I don't know... I don't even know anyone Australian, and I can tell it's a bad accent. And so that bit always... Like, I don't know, the last 15 minutes take it down a little bit for me, but the first, 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours or something like that for me are pretty much peak cinema. Yeah. Just amazing. There's so many funny bits in it as well, like the bag scene with Jonah Hill. It's just so fucking funny. Like, I love how Tarantino will just put a funny scene in the middle of a really intense or serious situation.
But one that doesn't feel out of place either, like it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a testament.
He just really commits to the bit and it works. But yeah, the action, the shootout is one of the best. Actually, this is the film that also got me into westerns. Like, now I've seen a lot of westerns, but I had no interest in seeing westerns at all. Watched this, went back, watched a ton of westerns. None of them, I didn't like any of them as much as this. But
it's tension done right as well. I feel like the shootout happens just when it's built up enough that it's a very satisfying payoff to what you've experienced leading up to that
definitely
moment.
does, yeah. And again, like, another thing about this is, we're coming back to it again, but it's the soundtrack. Like, there's so many songs on this movie that are just fucking, like, really good. Like, I can listen to this soundtrack when I'm not watching the movie. It's just brilliant.
He's a master of the art of soundtracks, Tarantino.
He is. Well, that's the thing, like, he's a cinephile, he knows, like, everything about film, but he also knows, like, a lot about music. I don't know how he's got time, but yeah.
Yeah, it just shows how good he is when he's able to incorporate the soundtrack in such, like, a perfect time in the film as well. Like, none of the songs feel out of place. They all relate to what's happening on screen and they're relevant. But in terms of just, like, an overall Tarantino film, this is just peak for us. I feel like Tarantino so far has not yet done any better in terms of an overall film.
I think he has made... I think Inglourious Basterds is better than this, and probably Pulp Fiction. Well, yeah, Pulp Fiction as well. But in terms of, like, for my taste, I don't think he ever will make a film that I enjoy. But like this, saying it's my favourite Tarantino film, for a period of time, it was my favourite film, straight up. And the only reason it isn't anymore is because I actually watched it too much. Like, I ruined it for myself by watching it so often.
Right.
But yeah, I fucking love Django Unchained, and it's got to be number one on this list.
Nice. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. Are we right? Are we wrong? Thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Should we have ranked some slightly higher, lower? Give us your opinions. We'll be very interested to learn. Like and subscribe to the video if you enjoyed. And until then, I've been Matt.
I've been Dan.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Au revoir, Shoshana!